Hello everyone, I'm Jim Rohn. Have you ever wondered why cutting off contact with someone can make your mind spin? One day you decide to walk away. No texts, no calls, no looking back. But instead of feeling relieved, you find yourself stuck in an emotional whirlwind. Curiosity, regret, even obsession. Why aren't they reaching out? What are they thinking? Do they really care? These questions follow you like a shadow, silently clinging to you, making you doubt yourself. This is the mysterious psychology we're going to explore today. What people who avoid you secretly hope for when you cut off contact. Did you know that behind their silence lies not just an answer, but a mirror reflecting your deepest fears? In this video, I'll reveal 3 psychological secrets that most of us experience but rarely dare to face. You'll understand why going no contact is like a mental chess game and how to regain control over your own emotions. This is not just a journey to understand others, but a path to rediscover peace within your soul. If you want to better understand yourself and the relationships around you, hit the subscribe button now so you don't miss the upcoming deep dives. Ready? Let's step into this story. You won't want to miss a second. When you decide to cut off contact, the first thing they feel isn't confusion or fear of losing you, but a subtle curiosity. They don't rush to confront the emptiness like you might think. Instead, they begin to wonder whether you still care about them, whether your heart still beats for them, or if they still hold some influence in your life. It's not exactly a conscious thought. They're acting out of an instinct rooted deeply in how they connect with others. They believe that with the emotions you once gave them, it would be hard for you to completely let go. Many people mistakenly think that disappearing will immediately cause the other person to panic, realize your worth, and come running back. But for those with avoidant tendencies, it's not that simple. They don't rush toward you to hold on, they retreat, curling up in their safe shell. If they sense you're still attached, maybe quietly checking their social media or sinking into old memories, they won't bother moving. To them, as long as you still remember, the invisible string remains intact, even if no words are spoken. That's why they don't rush to reconnect. They're not afraid of being forgotten right away. They're confident that their presence still lingers in your mind. They like you being stuck in regret, quietly rummaging through the past, rereading old messages, dissecting every moment that's passed. They want their absence to become a trap, keeping you frozen in place, unable to move on. As long as you let them occupy your thoughts, they don't need to make any effort. You're the one carrying all the emotional chaos, while they calmly wait for you to question what happened, to doubt yourself. The trap is your craving for an explanation, for clarity, but they never give you that. They silently pull away, leaving behind incomplete fragments, sending your mind spinning in a cycle of unanswered questions. That's why cutting off contact hurts, not just because you miss them, but because you're stuck longing for an exit they'll never open. Avoidant people don't operate through normal emotional logic. They never give you a clear ending because that would mean exposing their vulnerability, something they always try to avoid. Instead of confronting things, they keep their distance, pretending not to care, yet skillfully leaving gaps that make you keep questioning. If you find yourself obsessively checking if they're online, waiting for a message, or wondering if they miss you, congratulations, you've walked right into the trap they set. The more you drown in that emotional mess, the more certain their victory becomes. The danger lies in this: if you can't resist texting them first, even just to seek clarity, you unintentionally prove them right, that you still haven't let go. Just one moment of weakness is enough to make them sigh in relief, reassured that you're still within their control and they don't have to change a thing. Understanding this psychology is the key to turning the tables. When you step out of the script they've written, stop feeding power into that invisible manipulation, that's when the power shifts back to you. They only truly feel the loss when you let go completely, but as long as you're still haunted, they remain in their favorite position, close enough to tease, but far enough to stay safe. Deep down, they fear intimacy but crave connection in their own way. When you go no contact, They don't rush to chase after you, they sit still and wait. They believe that if you truly care, you won't be able to stay away for long. That belief is their protective wall, helping them maintain a cold exterior while still holding the upper hand in your heart. For avoidant people, relationships feel like a looming threat, always ready to take away the freedom they treasure. When you create distance, they don't see it as an end, just a pause, a phase they believe will end when you can no longer resist and return. In their minds, your silence isn't permanent, just a small test or a moment of impulsiveness that will pass. They tell themselves they can wait, because distance is where they feel most comfortable. That's why when you pull away, they're unfazed, unlike those who constantly fear abandonment. Space to them is familiar, almost essential. They don't feel emptiness quickly because they've mastered the art of hiding emotions. But don't be mistaken, they're not entirely emotionless. Deep inside, they quietly hope you'll be the one to break the silence, proving they don't need to put in any effort to keep you. They would rather wait for you to soften than take a step themselves, because initiating means exposing their longing, something they fear more than rejection. So why are you usually the one to give in? Because the silence gradually becomes a burden, making you believe they don't care at all. But in truth, they are masters of pretending to be indifferent. When you text first, they smile to themselves, seeing it as proof that you're still attached, and they can continue the push-pull game. But if you stay firm, surpass the time frame they expected, that's when they begin to waver, even if they never admit it. Everything starts to shift as time goes on. The control they once held slowly slips. They begin to wonder if they misjudged how attached you really were. For the first time, the thought that you might not return creeps into their mind, and that's when the no contact truly shakes them. Avoidant people often believe that time will side with them. They don't feel the emptiness right away like you do. They believe that day by day your feelings will cool down, and the reasons you left will fade from memory. They understand, whether consciously or not, that human memory is deceptive. Over time, you might forget the pain they caused and only remember the sweetness. At first, you walk away with conviction, clearly remembering why you had to, the distance they created, the times they made you question your own worth. But then, the longing starts knocking. You think about the warm moments, the smile they once gave you, the conversations that made your heart flutter. They have a strange charm, both cold and alluring, that makes the beautiful memories feel more vivid than ever. And that's what they wait for, you wrestling with your emotions while they don't have to lift a finger. They believe that as long as you sit there long enough, the once clear pain will fade, and instead of remembering the reason for the breakup, you'll start to wonder if you overreacted. Maybe they weren't as bad as you thought, maybe you were too sensitive, or maybe the timing was just off. They don't need to change, because they know memory can make you waver. When the longing resurfaces, you're more likely to fall into the trap of searching for signs that they still care. You scroll through their social media, reread old messages, or even send a casual hello just to test the waters. And at the moment you're weakest, they reappear. Not with grand changes, but just enough to keep you spinning in that familiar emotional cycle. They don't need sweet apologies or big promises. They let your own mind do the work of pulling you back. They know that without clarity, you'll start crafting a softer story to comfort yourself. That's why many people, even after firmly deciding to cut contact, end up breaking their own boundaries. They think one message will bring closure, but in reality, it only deepens the wound. What they don't expect is that you can overcome this script holding on to the truth, instead of letting beautiful memories cloud your judgment. When you no longer let time distort what really happened, their influence begins to fade. They want you to stay, but they're not willing to change. Instead of offering sincerity, they scatter crumbs of emotion, just enough to give you hope, but never enough to satisfy you. Their tactic is subtle yet effective. A small comment on a post, a "Hey, how are you" message, or simply watching your story. These seemingly harmless actions stir your emotions, making you wonder what they mean, if they still care. They don't need to try hard, because they know a tiny gesture is enough to keep you hooked. while they stay at a safe distance, watching you struggle with your own feelings. Those crumbs work because they awaken hope in you. Hope that they're changing, that they realize your worth, that things could be different. But don't be mistaken, vague messages or shallow interactions are not signs of progress. They're tools to keep you within reach without any real commitment. If they truly wanted to reconnect, they wouldn't stop at a few casual words. They would open up, take responsibility, and change their approach. But for avoidance, that rarely happens because sincerity requires facing the fear of getting hurt, something they always run from. This tactic is dangerous because it exploits the very feelings you have for them. You don't want to seem overly sensitive or ignore a small gesture, so you respond. Maybe briefly, maybe calmly, but even that is enough to show them you haven't let go. They don't need to try hard, just sprinkle a little attention to keep you from leaving. Without ever giving you what you truly need, they control the pace of the relationship, keeping you suspended in ambiguity, hoping you'll accept those crumbs as proof of care, even when their actions say the opposite. Want to break free? See the game for what it is. They're not afraid of pressure, but they fear true absence. When the crumbs stop working, when you stop reacting, when their small efforts fall into silence, the power begins to shift back to you. That's when they start to wonder if you've really left, and they're forced to face what they've always avoided, losing you. Isn't just a possibility, it's real. Even if they appear indifferent on the surface, deep down, avoidants hope you'll never fully forget them. They don't necessarily want you to suffer, but they like the idea that you still care, still analyze the past, and still hold on to hope that things could be different. That gives them a sense of control. They know you once had feelings for them, and they believe it's hard for you to completely detach. That's why they never give you a clear ending. Leaving things vague is their way of keeping you emotionally tied. Healing means facing the truth, not clinging to an idealized version you made up. But they count on the idea that heartbreak takes time to heal, and when the initial pain fades, you'll start to crave the closeness you once had. They assume that even in their silence, you'll keep them alive in your mind, constantly replaying old moments, wondering what went wrong and if they ever truly cared. That's why they often reappear just as you begin to move on, when you focus on yourself, when you stop searching for answers. They sense the shift, maybe through intuition, maybe through how you slowly drift away, and instead of letting you be free, they show up to disrupt the peace you've just found. A random message, a small interaction, or simply a sign of life on social media. These things aren't random. They want to reinsert themselves into your thoughts, not to rekindle love, but to make sure you haven't erased them completely. Because if you truly let go, they lose the comfort of knowing they still hold a place in your heart. What avoidants fear most is not your sadness, but your relief at their absence. They don't want you to realize that their distance says nothing about your worth, but everything about their own insecurities and emotional walls. They don't want you to see that you deserve a complete, wholehearted love, not the half-hearted kind that makes you doubt yourself. Above all, they fear that you'll become indifferent to them, because indifference is something they can't manipulate. When you truly heal, their silent influence fades. Healing is not just about forgetting, but about seeing everything clearly. No fantasies, no self-deception, and realizing you're fine, with or without them. They often only realize your value when it's too late. When you cut contact, they tell themselves they're fine, that they enjoy their freedom, that this distance is what they always wanted. They believe you'll come back soon, or that their feelings will cool down before they have to face the longing. But what they don't expect is that prolonged silence brings a strange, unsettling feeling they're not used to. They're used to pushing people away to stay in control, but they always assumed you'd still be there, waiting. When you truly disappear, they lose their grip. At first, they brush it off, thinking you just need time, but as the days turn into weeks, and weeks into months with no word from you, their confidence begins to crack. They start wondering if they misunderstood you, if you've truly moved on. That uncertainty rattles them. Because for the first time, the wall of indifference they built no longer hides the feeling of being left behind. When you truly disappear, the avoidant begins to feel the emptiness, even if they don't easily show it. They don't rush to text or call, but choose to test the waters, quietly checking your social media, vaguely mentioning you to mutual friends, or posting things that seem like distant signals. These small steps help them attempt to revive some connection without exposing vulnerability. But if you don't respond, if all their efforts fall into silence, they begin to feel lost, even if they appear carefree on the outside. Inside, they start questioning whether they misjudged, whether they've let something valuable slip away that they never appreciated. At this point, they have to face the thought that their distance might have pushed you away for good. At first, when you cut contact, they're not as worried as others might be. They tell themselves that distance is what they wanted, that they'll feel more at ease without you. They assume you'll come back soon just like before. But what they don't anticipate is that prolonged silence creates an uncomfortable void that cuts through the confident mask they wear. Initially, they even feel relieved, thinking they've reclaimed their freedom. But as time passes, a strange feeling emerges, a sense of loss they can't ignore. They always hope you'll be the one to break the silence, pulled back by longing. They expect you to forget the hurt and remember only the good moments. But when you stay firm and don't show up, their certainty begins to falter. For the first time, they must confront the pain they've always avoided, losing someone who genuinely cared and who may never return. At this point, the avoidant often throws out crumbs, a sudden message, a random like on social media, or a distant message through mutual friends. They're not seeking real reconnection, they just want to see if you still care. These tiny actions are their way of keeping you within reach, reassured that you haven't forgotten them, that they can come back anytime they choose. But if you don't respond, don't chase those vague signals. Everything shifts. The illusion that they can always return on their own terms begins to crumble. What shocks them most is when they see you thriving without them. They were sure you'd wait, forever lingering in the past because of old feelings. But now they witness you moving forward, glowing, no longer relying on their validation or hoping they'll change. In that moment, a quiet regret settles in. Sadly, when they finally realize they lost something precious by avoiding their emotions, it's often too late. They've grown so accustomed to distance that they no longer know how to cherish a deep connection, leaving them alone with a mess of unspoken feelings. True healing is when you stop waiting for someone to see your worth and start affirming it yourself. Cutting contact isn't about revenge. It's about breaking free from a tangled emotional cycle. It's how you come to realize that real love shouldn't leave you anxious, confused, or insecure. It should lift you up with clarity and wholeness. When you stop caring about their expectations and put yourself first, you reclaim the power to lead your own life. You don't just walk away. You truly let go, transforming into a version they never imagined, someone who no longer needs them to feel whole. Your victory doesn't lie in making them regret, but in no longer depending on them. That is true strength. Thank you for taking the time to listen and recognize your own worth. Letting go of an avoidant, standing firm, and choosing healing over clinging to their comfort is not easy, but it is incredibly worthwhile. You deserve a love that is clear, a relationship that brings peace instead of confusion, where you don't have to wonder whether you're enough. If there's one thing I want you to remember, it's that cutting contact isn't about proving anything to them. It's about freeing yourself. It's how you reclaim your emotional energy, break out of meaningless cycles, and become a stronger version of yourself, unwilling to accept anything less than what you truly deserve. The real victory comes when you stop waiting for them to change and start investing in yourself. Keep moving forward, stay resilient on your journey, and never forget, the right person will never make you beg for sincerity or respect. Trust this path, trust yourself, and understand that walking away from what doesn't nourish you is not a loss, it's your greatest win. In the end, the journey of cutting contact with an avoidant isn't just about walking away from them, it's about finding yourself again. A stronger, more confident version no longer imprisoned by emotional crumbs. You deserve clarity, wholehearted love, and real peace, not endless cycles of doubt or hopeless waiting. When you let go and move forward, you don't just win over them, you affirm your own worth. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, to listen, and to walk with me in this story about the power of healing. If you found this content meaningful, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss upcoming shares, and be sure to leave a comment below, share your thoughts or your experience. I'd love to hear from you. Together, we'll continue this journey of discovery and growth.